Picture a crowd gathering in a dusty frontier square, not in joy but in grim anticipation. Families, even children clutching picnic baskets, arrive to witness a man's final breath upon the gallows. This wasn't an exception. It was the everyday face of justice across the early American West. From the mid-1800s to the early 1900s, punishment on the frontier was swift, public, and merciless. Where courts were scarce and law struggled to root itself in such vast, untamed lands, communities created their own harsh systems of order, systems that would horrify the modern world. These punishments weren't simply sentences. They were warnings carved into flesh, displayed openly for all to see. The frontier demanded severity, and those who defied its rules paid prices that scarred both the body and the memory. Frontier courts and swift sentencing. Before courthouses dotted the western horizon, justice traveled on wooden wheels. Wagon trains formed councils empowered to act as their own courts. Judges, juries, and executioners chosen from within their own ranks. These mobile tribunals handled everything from small quarrels to deadly crimes, often passing judgment within mere hours. Minor offenses were settled through mediation, while violent acts might earn public whipping. When murder struck the trail, emigrants gathered jurors who stood in semicircles around the accused, recreating the legal rituals they had known back east. Frontier justice was infamous for its speed. In 1859, John Stoffel was convicted and hanged just 48 hours after murdering his brother-in-law. For gold dust in Denver, a settlement of only 150 buildings that still gathered 1,000 witnesses for the execution. Territorial judges built legacies upon their severity. Isaac C. Parker, history's hanging judge, sentenced 160 men to death during his 21 years at Fort Smith, Arkansas, though only 79 met the noose. These makeshift courts operated out of necessity, not legal precedent, enforcing order through immediate, undeniable consequence. Branding with hot irons. The burning hiss of iron against flesh served a dual purpose on the frontier: branding criminals forever, and warning every witness what defiance would cost. Borrowed from livestock branding, this brutal practice left offenders marked for life, their crimes literally engraved on their bodies. In 1790 at Jonesboro, Tennessee, horse thieves John Wilson and Joseph Folsom endured 39 lashes and then received the letter H seared into their right cheeks and T into their left, a permanent declaration of guilt ensuring no community would ever forget their past. Horse stealing, a crime deadly serious in a land where survival often depended on an animal, frequently drew such marks alongside other heavy punishments. The practice reached further still. In 1640, a Virginia court ordered a runaway slave branded with the letter R, while thieves might carry a T burned into their forehead or hand. Some frontier towns branded repeat offenders of lesser crimes as well, creating a living record that followed them wherever they wandered. The psychological wound cut as deep as the physical one. 4 branded individuals were cast out by communities, denied new beginnings, their scars becoming both punishment and prophecy for a future filled with rejection. Public whippings for frontier crimes. The crack of a whip cut through frontier settlements is one of the most common forms of corporal punishment. English settlers had carried their customs across the ocean, and flogging adapted easily to the rough, raw conditions of the New World. Whipping posts stood boldly in public squares, often beside courthouses or on the common, constant reminders of the price of lawlessness. The weapons ranged from simple leather whips to the dreaded cat-o'-nine tails, a multi-thonged lash capable of tearing skin into ribbons. In 1846, a Raleigh Register reader wrote in horror after watching the brutal flogging of 2 men, their 39 lashes leaving backs swollen, welted, and streaked with blood. The number 39 carried deep significance, 1 lash short of the biblical 40 stripes, a limit meant to avoid accidental death while still delivering a punishment severe enough to terrify. Frontier communities used flogging for countless offenses, from drunken outbursts and fistfights to theft and assault. On wagon trains pushing westward, even more violent crimes could bring public whippings, with the accused stripped and beaten before the very companions who traveled beside them each day. The public setting served many purposes. It shamed the offender, satisfied the community's sense of justice, and delivered a raw, unforgettable warning to anyone considering a similar path. Unlike branding or mutilation, whipping scars could sometimes be concealed, allowing offenders a chance at new beginnings if they moved on. Though the memory of standing exposed before a crowd often lingered longer than any wound. Legal hangings under territorial law. The scaffold rose as the final, unforgiving symbol of frontier justice. The place where formal law collided with public spectacle. During the Wild West era, hangings were community events that drew massive crowds. And families rarely missed the executions, bringing even their children to watch. These grim ceremonies were carefully organized. An 1849 invoice from the Santa Fe County District Court in New Mexico showed that a single execution cost over $110, more than $4,500 today, with territorial governments paying for lumber, labor, coffins, rope, and every other necessity. Professional executioners took pride in their craft. George Mailden, the notorious Prince of Hangmen, preferred a rope 1.5 inches thick, soaked and air-dried before being tallowed or soaped. And across 2 decades he supervised at least 60 executions. The process became increasingly precise, with formulas created to ensure a swift, clean drop, placing the noose not on the left side, to knock the condemned unconscious quickly. Final words were permitted, and they varied widely. In 1850, one of the 5 Cayuse men hanged in the Oregon Territory asked whether missionaries had not taught them that Christ died to save his people. Doctors attended to confirm death, though their role proved unnecessary at times. As in 1901 when Black Jack Ketchum's head tore from his body during a disastrous hanging. Theatrical though they were, these legal executions reflected genuine attempts to bring formal justice into lands shifting from frontier chaos toward organized society. Ear and nose cropping for serious crimes. Among the most disfiguring punishments carried from colonial tradition. Ear and nose cropping existed to permanently mark serious offenders. In many jurisdictions of the 13 colonies, even modest crimes such as hog stealing could result in a person's ears being nailed to the pillory and then slit loose, or entirely removed. This brutal penalty carried into frontier settlements, its permanence serving both punishment and warning. The severity varied. In 1755 in Charles County, Maryland, a young African-American woman convicted of perjury was pilloried, flogged, and had her ears cut close. Others endured their ears nailed to the pillory board, forced to stand motionless for hours before the ears were severed to free them. The tradition stretched back to the Southwest Territory that later became Tennessee, where under the 1780 Cumberland Compact, Judge John McNary sentenced Nashville's first horse thief in 1793 to 1 hour in the stocks, 39 lashes, severed ears, and branded cheeks. Nose cropping, though rarer, appeared in some regions for exceptionally vile crimes. These mutilations ensured that offenders could never outrun their past, their altered faces announcing their crimes to every observer, effectively condemning them to lifelong social exile even after the sentence ended. These punishments expose a frontier society wrestling to create order in immense territories where traditional law barely existed. What modern hearts regard as cruelty, frontier settlers saw as essential deterrence. Public penalties served practical roles in scattered communities, where news moved slowly and authority was fragile. Every branded cheek, every severed ear, every body swaying from a wooden beam, carried a message that needed no written law to be understood. As territories transformed into states and formal justice systems finally took hold, these brutal punishments slowly disappeared, replaced by prisons and penalties hidden from public view. Yet their legacy remains etched within the collective memory of the Wild West. A stark reminder that the thin layer of civilization often tore easily on the American frontier, where survival demanded heavy, unforgiving prices from anyone who dared to challenge the fragile order struggling to hold society together.